Hi, this is Siofra Bradigan, and this is Siofra's Magic Alcove. So, someone wrote in a question concerning the chosen ones being attacked by narcissists. I did a quick search and saw that there's a fair number of YouTube videos that are basically named "Why are the chosen ones being attacked by narcissists? Narcissists attacking the chosen ones, etc." So, I guess there is some videos out there on the subject, but it gave me a lot to think about. Just thinking about first, what does it mean to be a chosen one? And are there chosen ones? So we're going to just dive in and see what comes out. You know me. At one point, when I was young, when I was living in Rhode Island, no, I'd moved to Virginia. When I was living in Virginia as a teenager, and I was attacked by that dark spirit that tried to take over my body. The possession video I did talked about that. It was pretty intense, and because it was somewhat difficult for me to understand, I kept trying to put in a narrative that would make it make sense to me. And the narrative I came up with was that something out there was trying to stop me from doing whatever it was I was supposed to do in this world before I got strong enough to repel it, which obviously didn't work. So I was, what, 16, I think, maybe 15 when this happened to me. So not very well developed intellectually or emotionally, etc. at that point. I'd definitely been raised as a Christian at that point because I went to the Methodist church. That was the church that my mother went to, and my grandmother, apparently, it was the family religion. Um, Although my grandmother lived up in New Jersey, I didn't have that much contact with her. So I was clearly working from a lot of the information that I had based on religion, and Christian religion in particular. And in Christianity, as it's mostly practiced around the world, there is this dichotomy, the conflict, the battle between good and evil. So if you're on the side of the light, they put out the idea that evil will try to destroy you in order to prevent you from winning or doing whatever it is you're here to do, which sort of feeds the notion of being a chosen one. And I remember not that long ago, a client of mine who was in a fundamentalist missionary Christian group telling me that she could always tell that she was doing God's work by how often and how horribly the devil would attack her and, give her injuries, make her loved ones suffer, and so forth, which was a very odd idea to me at this point. It probably wouldn't have been that odd an idea when I was a teenager, but at this point in my mental and spiritual evolution, um, I definitely don't subscribe to the notion that there is this eternal battle between good and evil. If there, well, okay. The other thing I got from what she said was that she only felt she was doing God's work if she was miserable. And if she felt joy, then she would have been working for the other side. And that sort of brings up the whole I don't even know for sure exactly what to call it, but it's like a no-win scenario. If you are working from that kind of a paradigm, that no matter how good you are, fact, the better you are, the more likely you are to be attacked by demons and spirits and evil people, etc., in order to sway you to the other side or stop you from doing your good work. So that's part of it. And at one point, when I was pregnant with my daughter, there was this guy who was a self proclaimed prophet. He wrote his own prophecies and so forth, and then printed them up and read them out loud to other people. And he sort of attached himself to my family for a period of time. Said that he found us because he saw the angel floating over our cabin. That's how he found us, which didn't actually make me question anything at that point, because I've had two guardian angels with me ever since I can remember. So him being able to see an angel didn't seem to be out of the ballpark, far-fetched. And then as he started to proselytize his own particular brand of things, I became more and more suspicious, because in his version of reality, Jesus was going to be coming in spaceships, and when he entered the Earth's atmosphere with his armada of spaceships, it would activate the bubonic plague that had been hidden in all of the milk products in the world and kill those who weren't on the in and didn't know that it was bad. That piece of information gave me pause right on the spot, and I thought about what that would mean. That would mean that Jesus was a serial killer, mass murderer, actually, and that the first thing he was going to do when he came here was kill a bunch of people because of ego. So I determined that if this was somehow true, I wasn't going to be on his side, because who wants to be with a mass murderer? So I started eating cheese and doing a lot of dairy, just in case. Like, okay, I'm going to die with everybody else because this isn't okay with me. Which I thought was interesting mindset, that I went through that with that information. And then later, I had that experience where I heard what he was telling my husband. It turns out that not only were we important to this scheme, but my pregnancy and my upcoming daughter's birth was the signal for Jesus's invasion from space. You say these words out loud and you think, what? At least I do. Like, this doesn't sound correct. And when I kicked him out of my house and told him to leave and not come back, he took my husband out, my then husband, obviously not Ian, and had a chat with him and told him all of this and how important it was, etc. And I had one of my, I guess, astral clairaudient events, because it was like I was standing right next to him, and I heard every word that he said. And my then husband came back in, and I repeated the conversation to him. Says, well, this is what he's saying. So I want to be clear that he's not allowed to come back in our house. He's not allowed to visit me in the hospital. He's not allowed to see our daughter. He's like, I put my foot down. Like, this is not okay with me. And Rick was like, if that's how you feel about it. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've just said how I feel about it. There should be no question as to how I feel about this. So apparently I was a chosen one to give birth to the one who would bring Jesus back. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. Not quite the second coming, I guess, but anyway, quite clearly, I gave birth to my daughter. Jesus didn't come. No spaceships came. No bubonic plague was activated. And when that kind of stuff doesn't happen like people think it's going to, I always wonder, how do they reconcile their truth, their version of truth, of what they know, with the reality that it didn't happen. And I've watched a bunch of programs on that kind of thing, and they just sort of come up with an excuse. It was a test. It was the wrong person. It was a trick the devil was playing, making him think that I was the one and my daughter's birth was the one, and all this other stuff. Because it's a fanciful notion that has no basis in reality. So that's my experience, one of my experiences with being a chosen one. And then the idea, of course, had come up with that attempted possession by whatever that spirit was. It doesn't help that that spirit came with fire and sulfur, had all the classic signs of, what we determine to be demons. And I want to make a note here, I'm not a Christian. I haven't been a Christian for a long time. I don't follow the tenets or the belief systems that are there. I know a lot of you do, and my philosophy is I judge people by their actions, not by their beliefs. But I think it's important for us to look at and evaluate our beliefs and see if they make sense, if they're helping us. Because a belief is something that if you are totally absorbed in it, like we were talked about in the creating your own reality video, you can make your reality bend to your will in the sense that you will only see those things that fit whatever you've decided is reality. And your bias becomes clear. You interpret everything that happens to you through that specific lens. So if you believe that you are a chosen one and you subscribe to the notion that there are forces out there trying to stop chosen ones because there's a battle going on between good and evil, it really sets up a potential for a lot of internal conflict. Um, and that's an important thing to think about, that we're coming up with these narratives. This is not like something that's able to be proven with science or observation or so forth. These are belief systems. And by virtue of being a belief system, there are things we can choose to believe in or things we can choose not to believe in. But they don't have a, I don't know, independent reality that's provable. So that's the first kinds of thoughts that I had with this question. Then there's the notion of a group of people being chosen. And I've seen this not just in Christianity or Judaism or Islam, but in paganism as well. We have a local group in our area, a Druidic circle, that is preparing for the apocalypse, and that they are the chosen ones to bring civilization back to the world after it's destroyed. It's the apocalyptic vision of the end of the world, so we can get a reboot, restart, do over, whatever, is prolific and inimical. It's out there and in a lot of different systems. And so that in itself is a dangerous notion. It disturbs me greatly that there are people out there who are hoping for the end of the world and are working actively in some cases to try and bring it about, to cause conflict in the world in order to create a scenario for World War III to take place to destroy us all, or hoping that we're going to get some horrific disease, and that's part of our, I guess, collective karma, if you want to look at it that way, is what we have coming to us because we're non-believers. And whenever you start looking at the notion of being chosen, there's always a group of people that aren't chosen. You can't have chosen people unless you have unchosen, not chosen people. because there's nothing to compare yourself to. So, someone who believes that they're chosen thinks that they're here for a special purpose, that they have a special job to do. That the world is depending upon them doing this thing, and therefore there are forces arrayed against them to try and stop them from doing this thing. And the other people who aren't chosen, who aren't worthy of whatever the new reality is supposed to be, are the ones that are left behind or destroyed or are trying to stop you from succeeding. So it creates this like battle between thoughts and ideas. And if you interpret everything in those in that particular mindset, that would mean that anytime you can't get a parking space, or the thing that you wanted to buy is no longer available, or you have a loss of income, or you don't get the job that you're applying for, or fill in the blank, then the reason that that isn't working is because someone's trying to stop you from being, becoming, doing, fulfilling. And that's not just individuals, but it also works for groups. Like, the chosen of God. There's the the Judaic version of that, where the Jews are supposedly the chosen of God and were given the land, etc., because they were the chosen people. But then there's other people that feel like they're the chosen people and they're not the same chosen people. They have a different belief system. And it also seems to encourage the notion of being better than another group. You have an in. You are smarter than they are. You know more. You're more knowledgeable. You're um, more evolved, more spiritual, more in tune than these other people. And I find that offensive because that idea has been used to subjugate groups of people and still is being used to subjugate groups of people in various social situations and social environment. For example, the quote unquote Christians who feel that even though they say that God made everything and God made everybody, if you are gay or trans or something like that, then you're not really a child of God. There's something wrong with you. You're obviously working for the other guy or been sucked in by the other guy. And so you're adding to the evil in the world, and maybe they'll try and save you by turning you into someone you're not, which is also offensive. Um, Women, as a general rule, are not considered intelligent enough in a lot of places and throughout history to be able to have and express complex ideas and notions. Some people in our community here still think women shouldn't have the right to vote because we're not intelligent enough to understand and comprehend the issues that are at stake and make an informed decision. And that same argument or notion has been used against, um, you know, his, Hispanics, uh, African American, or whatever the current term is at the moment, because I'm not up on it, or women, or a religious group, or whatever it happens to be, an economic group. There's a lot of built-in potential for prejudice, racism, homophobia, misogyny, you name it. There's a possibility of it there in the concept itself of being chosen because there have to be those who are not chosen. Can't have chosen without unchosen or not chosen. And that has historically been a reason for wars to begin between different groups of chosen ones who are there to stake their claim on what they say their deity has given them. And there's other people living there right now, so we're just going to go in and take over and get rid of them because it belongs to us. A lot of possession involved in that. When I was living with my first husband, the sociopath rapist, uh, he sort of generated this whole notion that we were aliens from another world, which is why I didn't fit in, which at the time made sense to me because I couldn't make sense of myself. And that we were chosen, we were, here to like bring about some saving the planet against the galactic overlords that were coming or some such thing. He had a whole story. He had names and everything. He wrote out a treatise on it and so forth. And our role was to be a 5 individuals who had these amazing psychic abilities, and we had to find each other. And there were only 4 of us, so we were missing the 5th. And so we were on a search for the 5th member of the group that would make us whole, and then everything would work. Like kind of entertaining when I think about some of the stuff we did and where we went in order to try and find the 5th, which we never did. But that was the narrative I was functioning under, and I don't think that anymore. I mean, obviously, I was born here. I have an actual mother. When I told my mother I thought I was an alien, she's like, I was there at your birth. Yeah, but I have the spirit of an alien. I don't know. I don't know how I managed to make it work, but when you're working under a narrative that doesn't really make logical sense, you don't need logic in order to make it work. Because, not logical. So what I see in this is that this is the power over, power under paradigm. It's the same. I mean, it's really no different. It's just different words to describe the same thing. Someone has to be in charge, someone is above others. In this case, in the spiritual sense, the chosen ones are above the regular people who don't understand and comprehend what's going on because we are so wise and so knowledgeable and we know more. We have more experiences, etc. And so we are in the upper echelons of the power structure in the spiritual sense, and others are like beneath or below us. And I object to that entirely. Because as I've said before, we're all here at different stages in our development. And yeah, I see stuff that other people don't see. I see stuff a lot of people don't see. Doesn't mean I'm crazy, and it doesn't mean what I'm seeing isn't real. It also doesn't mean that I'm more special. It just means that I am who I am. And I'm where I'm at. And if we didn't have diversity, what would be the point? I mean, diversity seems to be the foundation of life itself. There's not one kind of bird, there's not one kind of insect, there's not one kind of anything out there, really. Everything has diversity at its core, so that should something major happen, there's a chance that some of them will continue, even if most of them don't. That's the whole notion. I came to paganism because of my vivid and intense emotional encounters with other forms of consciousness that cohabit the earth with us. And the fact that we're part of this biosphere, we are part of this planet, and it's, in my opinion, important for us to recognize that and to connect to it, not to try and extract ourselves from it, to rise above it. Uh, we don't have to have a grand purpose in order to justify our existence. I think that's another one of those things. So I've certainly met people who felt that they were chosen for some special task. I see it on TV whenever there's some kind of a intense natural disaster or man-made disaster where most of the people involved died. Uh, a lot of times the survivors are trying to wrap their brain around, why am I not dead like everybody else? Survivor's guilt is real. And one of the narratives they come up with is, I was saved for a special purpose. I'm now going to dedicate my life to that purpose in order to validate the fact that I didn't die with everybody else and make it mean something, make their deaths mean something. It's a whole other weird thing to that feel that that's important, although it certainly is quite a motivational underpinning for a lot of social change when horrific things happen that are done by people and you're trying to change how people think and how they look at the world. So, and the other thing I see with this kind of narrative is the potential for not being able to trust your own instincts or believe your own eyes, that you can get fooled by the enemy, the evil, or whatever that's out there trying to stop you, that you need someone to intercede on your behalf, which is where we get the cult leaders who are chosen by God and are like have a, or by some other, I mean, there's not just Christianity, but there's a lot of other kinds of cults that are out there. But the foundation of all of them is that there's one person who is more in touch with whatever it is, whether it's the intellect, social change, the religion, the deity, um, the enlightenment, any of that stuff, that they are somehow closer to that source than you are and the other followers are. Is one of the reasons why people flock to them is because they're looking for purpose and they don't know what their purpose is, but they figure this person somehow knows what their purpose is and is so certain about what their purpose is, they can just trust them, tell them what their purpose is, and then go along with it, which is very dangerous. My idea of this is that your purpose is to become an individual, an individuated human being, well defined in your moral and ethical character, becoming an authentic self, regardless of where you were born, what philosophy, religion, or social standards, or whatever you're born into. Those things are secondary to becoming your true self. And that you don't need a prop in order to and hang your identity and self-worth on that kind of a prop of being chosen and special. So like I said, it's like, the power over, power under model is simple for it to be adapted to any scenario where you think that someone has more information, more insight, a closer connection or whatever to what you're looking for than anyone else. And I'm certainly one of those people that try to watch for that happening because that's something I'm against. So the bottom line is either we're all chosen or none of us are chosen, because it doesn't make sense that the universe would be set up that way. We just exist. We are all here. We're all on the same planet. We're all in the same boat, those of us who are alive. The spirits, I don't know what they're up to all the time, but, you know, they're going to survive whether our planet survives or not, because they're not dependent upon the biosphere for their sustenance and sustainability of the body form. But and I know I've talked about not liking different phrases or words that separate groups of people from, like, I'm a witch. A person who's not a witch doesn't mean anything to me. It just means that they're not following that path, and that's fine. I don't care. In fact, I consider it less likely that other people are going to be following this path, because the path as I see it is hard to follow because it takes a lot of inner work. You have to actually think things through and be willing to evaluate your own ideas, notions, narratives, etc. And that was something else that popped in when I was thinking about this whole subject. Um, the fact that the narrative, we all have a tendency to try and create a narrative to fit our experience. Understandable. Dangerous, but understandable. And when, for example, I went to the local beach, when a woman disappeared, they found her car, but they couldn't find her. And they'd actually been looking for her for 6 weeks or so and had never found anything. They had dogs, 100 people searching that park, and it's not that big of a space. And someone asked me if I could go check it out. And when I went to go check it out, I had some very intense experiences. I, everything I got, the psychic information or whatever you want to call it, was very physical in my body. I felt like, I had, I was hit in the head. I had pain, like something hitting me between my shoulders. Everything went dark, and without even questioning it at the time, I tried to fit these facts, which were correct, together and came up with a narrative that was wrong. The narrative I came up with was that someone had bludgeoned her and thrown her in the trunk of a car and dropped the lid on her and taken her away. So the facts, when I helped find her body, which I didn't think I could, but I did, which was weird in and of itself. You don't know for sure what you can do until you try it sometimes. I led the police officer that went with me to the state park, uh, almost directly to the body. We were there for 20 minutes and we found her, even though 100 people and dogs had been looking for her for quite some time. But what I did was I followed her psychic trail, I guess. I went to where she sat and wrote her suicide note and her letter to her loved ones about what she wanted them to do with her body, and then another letter to her sister about who she wanted to have certain items um, after they found her. And sitting there where she had written those letters that they did find in her car, I was suddenly overwhelmed with a sense of, this person really loved this place. This was her favorite place. And she came here initially to die because she was wanting to go home and not be in this world anymore, because she didn't feel like she belonged with people. Never found her place for whatever reason. And then I left and walked over to where she parked her car and stopped for a minute, which was what she did. She took off her shoes and she put her letters in the back seat of her car. And I walked across the parking lot. We're talking 30 feet tops, from where she had sat to where I stopped. And me and the police officer was just standing there, and the wind stopped blowing and she was close enough for us to smell her. And it turned out that she had overdosed purpose on some medication that she had, and previously she had attempted suicide, but people had seen her, and she didn't want to be stopped this time. She was committed to leaving. So she had walked down the path a short distance and stepped off the path and sat in front of a small tree with her back so that people walking by wouldn't actually see her there. And then she took the overdose, and when the poison hit her body, she went into convulsions, which is what had happened previously. And she hit her head and her shoulders against the tree and buried herself underneath the leaves, and she was not visible. She was completely buried, and no one could see her, which isn't what she wanted. And the officer had to be standing right on top of her. She was buried enough down, and look down and see her leg after we smelled the smell, and he knew that something was dead. We weren't sure exactly what. And he found her body. And interestingly, for me, when that happened, it felt like somebody punched me in the stomach really hard, and all the air came out of my body, and then I felt better. I had been in an incredibly stressed state without realizing it up until that moment. And then, after, we found her, I started thinking about the experience that I had and realized that my physical experience of what happened to her was 100% correct, but it was me trying to put it into a narrative that made it fall apart. So that was an interesting lesson, that you can get accurate information, but once you try to put it in a narrative, you may be missing the point. You may be misinterpreting the information that you're getting, and that can lead down all kinds of fun and interesting and sometimes crazy roads. So try to remember that. We all have our biases, we all have narratives, we all attempt to do this. The more you can kind of step back from the process and just accept the experience as it is without trying to put it into a framework that will make larger sense, the more likely you are to actually understand what happened and what the information actually means. There certainly are plenty of those kind of narratives out there right now between us living in a matrix kind of world or an experiment from the aliens or from the stars, or we have star seeds here, etc. All that kind of stuff. And that's what those are. Those are narratives. They're not necessarily facts, and they're not necessarily reality. They are things that we are creating in order to make things make sense to us. So that's that part. The other part is that narcissists are attacking the chosen to stop them from doing, which is the evil versus good dichotomy that we talked about already. However, that they've chosen narcissists for this role is, I think, hysterically funny to me, because by definition, narcissists only care about themselves. It's all about them. That's what the word means. It's just all about me. And, having power or abusing people and getting a kick out of it, tricking them and laughing behind their back that they're so stupid that they believe what you said, that kind of thing. That's what narcissists are all about. And they are toxic, there's no doubt about it. We definitely want to keep away from them, but I cannot envision a scenario where they would band together to do anything. It's just like the wrong word or the wrong thing. I don't know why they decided to go with the narcissist for this, because people are talking about narcissists a lot, maybe, and there's a lot of posts and conversations and stuff like, I was with a narcissist and I figured it out and I left, and then they attacked me, and yes, they are vindictive, absolutely, but they're personal. They're not, generally speaking, vindictive to an entire group of people. They like one-on-one abuse. And if you figure out who they are and you get out, then they will verbally attack you. They will try to turn your friends against you. They will make themselves the victim. Poor me, look what they did to me. Look how sad it is that They didn't accept all the wonderful love, etc., that I have to offer them, what's wrong with them. And it's all a bunch of mind games. That's emotional manipulation, toxic, etc. But I cannot see them working together. It's just not in their nature. Um, so I think that my initial evaluation, I guess, of this whole notion is that what we talked about before. Basically, it has to do with the individual trying to write a narrative that makes themselves make sense of what's happening to them, give themselves importance. It's certainly a potential ego trap, and watching for ego traps is something we ought to be doing. There are people out there who are incredibly talented artists. I'm an artist myself. They do stuff I can't even imagine. There are people out there who are amazing singers. I can sing, but I wouldn't be doing that for a living. There are pianists and musicians. I played an instrument when I was a kid. They can do it way better. They're much more dedicated to it, much more talented at it. It's okay for there to be incredibly talented people that aren't me and that I can't do. And and that's, like I said, that's one of the things I love about being here is the variety. We can learn from each other. We can learn from our environment. We can encounter things that we may not understand. We can share the information with one another. Just try to stay open in your own mind to the realization that our conclusions could be off. And as we learn more and grow more, we can change our conclusions of what reality is to us. And it doesn't invalidate someone else's reality. There's no reason to think that the person who's just going to work every day to make money for their family to survive and come home, watch a TV show, play with their kids, interact with their family or whatever is somehow less than those who are more focused on a spiritual path or spiritual journey and putting in that kind of work. Like I said, certainly never going to be playing Carnegie Hall for any reason. And I'm okay with that. So hopefully this has given you a little thought, something to consider. Whatever path you're on, whatever your belief system might be, and whatever your experiences are. Not trying to invalidate anyone's experience, but I question some of our conclusions. And I certainly am surprised at some of the narratives that seem to come out. And then the people that are willing to jump on it and take advantage of it and to fan the flames of insecurity and conflict. So I guess we'll talk about this at some other point. I look forward to your comments. This is my stance, and that's one of the reasons why this is my channel. And this is one of the things you expect from me. This is, at least at the moment, my truth. And I recognize that I might be wrong. So, anyway, hope you guys are having a great time. This has been Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. Blessed be.